After decades of skating anti-rocker, I have been skating flat for the past 4 years, and in that time I have tried an absolute truckload of options. In this video, I'm going to talk to you about what I believe are the 5 best frames for skating flat. First up is the Fluid V from Kizer. This is also one of the cheapest options when it comes to buying flat frames, and the reason for that is USD have kind of devalued it to a certain extent because they keep putting it as a stock frame on USD, on Mesmer, and as a result there are a lot of these flying around and people just kind of think of it as a frame that comes with skates instead of an aftermarket frame in its own right, which it should definitely be considered at because it performs really well. But as a result of being a stock frame, loads of people buy a full setup and then sell these on Facebook Marketplace, and you can get a brand new pair of these for £30, sometimes even £20, which is an unbelievable bargain for this frame. In addition to being one of the cheapest frames on the market, it's also one of the most long lasting. It's got really thick frame walls that can just take an absolute beating. You can skate a bunch of rough ledges and these will last a really long time. Another thing I like about this frame is it comes with a relatively deep groove, so there's not that much break-in time. In a first session, you can feel pretty comfortable on H-block tricks, which isn't that common on flat frames. A lot of them tend to have quite kind of shallow grooves, and you need to kind of wear in your own particular personal groove before you can feel comfortable on things like Royales, Favres, Unities. That is not the case with this frame. Out the box, this frame works really well. In addition to lasting really well and having no break-in time, these slide surprisingly well on all surfaces. Rails, skate park, coping, ledges. I have never encountered any issues with these being slow or sticky on anything. This frame also offers really good wheel bite protection, and that's because it's got these little nubs on either side of the H-block, but that kind of brings me to a couple of negatives about this frame. The H-block is deep, but it's also quite a narrow groove, and as a result I got caught out a couple of times. I would catch, or my foot would skip off on things like a top acid or a Unity, and I would get pitched, and until you break it in and get it a little bit wider, it can sometimes be a little bit unpredictable. It can sometimes let you down. There's no break-in time for this frame. You'll be able to lock on straight away, but it's just a matter of how comfortable that lock on is. The only other negative thing I will say about this frame is it is an absolute nightmare to set up. These frame walls are really thick and really rigid when you first get them, so getting wheels on the outside are easy enough. Getting wheels on the inside are an absolute pain in the hoop. You will find yourself cursing, throwing them against a wall, losing your mind. I had to jam a chisel in there to widen it out to get it in, and even then there's a lot of tapping with a mallet going on, and it's just very annoying. But if you can get through the trauma of setting them up, this is a great flat frame, and it's an incredibly cheap flat frame. I would argue that the Fluid V is probably the most underrated flat frame out there. Next up on the list is the Featherlight 4 frame from Ground Control. I did a poll on my YouTube channel to ask how many people had skated these, and the majority of answers came back saying that they'd never even tried this frame. And of the people who had tried it, they all said they enjoyed it. So it kind of seems to be that the Ground Control Featherlight 4 is suffering the same fate that the Fluid V has, in that people don't really value it as an aftermarket frame. They think of it as a stock frame that just comes on razors. But this frame is so much better than I thought it was going to be. I'd skated Featherlight 3s before when I was skating anti-rocker and just found the plastic a bit soft and slow, and I was pretty much expecting the same thing to happen with these, but from the first session that I skated these, I was absolutely blown away. They slide fantastic on every surface, and particularly on rough surfaces, because the plastic is a little softer, it just seems to slide really well over it. It's almost as if the kind of softer plastic provides a cushion when you're grinding, and particularly on the rough ledges that I've been skating near my house, these really come into their own and didn't get hung up, didn't stick, didn't have any issues with sliding once. As you can see from this H-block, these have seen a lot of action, and that brings me on to my next point. It comes with a replaceable H-block, which I think is kind of nonsense. You can put an aluminium one in there, but I would never do that. I would also never replace the H-block because, as you can see, I've been grinding into the H-block and the frame wall, so if I put a new H-block in there, it would just look and feel weird. But this H-block is brilliant. It's got really nice tapering, as you can see, and as a result of that, this has no break-in time whatsoever. You do not need to wear your own groove into this. Once again, like the Fluid V, it's got brilliant cupping. I would argue it's even got better cupping than the Fluid V, so wheels 2 and 3 are protected, and because it's tapered, you do not have to break in your own groove in these. There is no break-in time whatsoever. Straight out the box, these work incredibly well. Unlike the Fluid V, these are an absolute dream to set up. Because the plastic is a little bit softer and I would argue the dimensions are a little bit better, setting these up was no effort whatsoever. The middle wheels just slotted into place. There was no tapping, no losing my mind, jiggling an Allen key to try and get the bolt to go through the bearing, the spacer, etc, etc. These, I think I pretty much set these up in like 5 minutes. It was no hassle whatsoever. So if you're looking for a quick and painless frame to shove on your skates and not go through the trauma of having to get everything working, I absolutely hate setting up skates. It's one of my least favorite things to do. So if you're like me and you hate setting up skates, this is the frame for you because it is unbelievably easy. The only complaint I would make about the Federlite 4 is it wears away pretty fast. As you can see, I've got quite a deep groove that's on my backslide foot, and I've only skated these for just over a month, definitely under 2 months, and there's already quite a lot of wear. But because the frames are symmetrical, if you're like me and you want to get the most out of it, you can just flip them round, and I've basically got an untouched groove on that side, so I could just wear in a backslide groove all over again. But yeah, brilliant option, not too expensive, a little bit more expensive than the Fluid V. I think these come in around about £75, but the Federlite 4 from Ground Control is an excellent flat frame. Next on the list is probably my favourite looking flat frame on the list, and that is the Kraft Pro frame from the new Everything company. I really like that it's got the one-sided axles that spell out TNEC, and I also kind of like that it's got the lettering at the top. I know some people aren't into that, but I think it gives it that kind of unique aesthetic. I also really love this colorway. It's a forest green, but it's also got a kind of like sparkly aesthetic into the side of it, and it just makes it look really interesting and different to other frames. This color in particular looks unbelievable on white skates, and I've also seen people using these on the base stem 909s, the pink 909s, and that color combination of the light pink and this dark green looks really, really good. Aesthetics aside, another thing I really like about this frame is it's incredibly easy to set up. A lot of flat frames can be quite annoying to get the middle two wheels in, but with this one, it was no issue whatsoever, and that is because TNEC include this little piece of plastic in between all of their frames. This might not seem like a big deal, it's just a little bit of plastic, but they include these in all of their frames in between the frame walls, so you can just easily slot your wheels in there. This is a stroke of genius. I have no idea why other companies don't do this. This is one of these ideas that you never think of, and then a brand does it and you're like, why the hell doesn't everyone do this? So other skate companies, take note. You should be including these in your flat frames to make them easier for people to set up. So TNEC, salute. The thing I like most about this frame is it slides really well on every surface. From pretty much anything I grinded, I had no issues whatsoever. I would actually say they're one of the faster flat frames on the market, Particularly on rails, I just felt myself absolutely flying on them, and on rough ledges they definitely seem to slide faster than other frames. I would also argue that this frame lasts a little bit better than other flat frames that I've tried. I've skated this for well over 2 months. In fact, this has been the frame that I've used probably most in 2024, and it's still going strong. It's still got a lot of life left in it, so no complaints in terms of its longevity. My biggest complaint about the TNEC Microcraft frame and all the TNEC frames is that it doesn't have a taper where the H-block meets the frame wall, and as a result this definitely has break-in time. The other frames that I've mentioned, you can just use them out the box and have no issues whatsoever on H-block tricks. With this, Royales, Favres, Unities, etc. definitely felt unstable and a little bit dangerous for the first session. I had to take these to a rough ledge and properly wear them in before I felt comfortable even just doing my safety tricks. So I imagine that would turn a lot of people off. In fact, I know it has turned people off because I've spoken to them about it and they've said they've skipped off on Favres or Royales or whatever, and as a result they've just given up on them. This is the kind of frame that you need to give it a little bit of time. You need to work it in, and if you do work it in and get a groove, you will be rewarded, because this is a brilliant frame, but you need to be patient. If you want it to work straight out the box, this probably isn't the frame for you, but if you're willing to put in the time and get your own groove in there and wear in your own taper, essentially, I guarantee you, you will really enjoy these. Next on the list is the Iqon AG60 frame that was designed by Justin Thursday. This is one of the most unique flat frames on the market for 2 reasons. One, it's got multicolour sliders that come with the frame in a variety of colours that you can put into the frame walls to change the colour. You can either have silver, red or gold, so it gives it that kind of unique selling point. Another unique selling point of the frame is that it has rockers only in the middle wheels, which allows you to rocker down, get a banana rocker, and it means that swiveling and manoeuvring and incorporating wizard skating into your aggressive skating is a little bit easier. I know some people like to do this, like Joey Lunger, who likes to use slightly bigger wheels on the middle as opposed to the outside, so he gets that rocker. If you don't want to do that, if you want to just use the same size wheels all the way along, this frame is the solution for that. Another great thing about this frame is it's longer than most frames. Their size medium frame is the equivalent to most brands' size large frame, and their size large frame will easily accommodate up to a size 12 or a size 13 UK. So if you're a big-footed skater, the Iqon AG60 frame is perfect for you because it's really nice and long. It's not far off the length of the full-size Wish frames, except unlike with the Wish frames, you don't have to use 2 different sets of wheels. You can use the same wheels all the way across. Once again, it comes with a great H-block, which is a little bit deeper and has great cupping, so it offers really good wheel bite protection and you don't have to wear in a groove at all. The very first session I was on rails, ledges, whatever, doing royales, doing all my H-block tricks, which is what I feel most comfortable on, and I didn't have any issues whatsoever. I wasn't getting wheel bite, I wasn't slipping off, it was just straight out the box, comfort. Another thing about this frame is it is unbelievably good for cess slides, and that is because the frame walls come down lower than on other flat frames and it covers more of the wheel, which can also be a blessing and a curse because it means that this frame only works with certain wheel profiles, and that's the reason why I stopped skating it. It will only work with flat profile wheels or round profile wheels. If you want to skate bullet profile, or you're like me and you want to skate a tapered wheel like the Mushroom Blade and Buddies wheels, this frame will not work. You will get slip outs. I was rolling up ramps and trying to turn and catching the frame wall and slipping out. If you're doing like a wall ride or a gap or whatever and you don't land your feet perfectly straight, you do run the risk of wiping out and just slapping to the ground. As a result, that was the reason that I stopped skating this frame. But if you like skating flat profile wheels or round profile wheels, this frame is an excellent option. In fact, my biggest complaint about the Iqon AG60 frame is not skating the frame at all, it's setting it up. This is the hardest frame to set up for flat. It is unbelievably difficult. It's so annoying. I was trying to do it in my garage, getting all the tools out, particularly the black ones because they've got carbon in it. Apparently the white ones are a little bit easier to set up, but it was just horrific. At one point I even gave up and returned to it the next day, and even then, I think in total it took me something like 2 hours to set them up, which is unheard of. So if you're getting these, you really need to either have a reverse clamp or a friend that is willing to prise them open for you while you put the middle wheels in. Otherwise, you're in for a very frustrating experience. Next on the list is the Entente Diridari frame. Fun fact about the Diridari, it was designed by the same person who designed the Kizer Fluid V, Mark Hughes. So if you like the Kizer Fluid V, this is kind of considered a Fluid V with a few upgrades. Unlike the other flat frames that have been mentioned in this video, this is not made out of a mold. This is not blended plastic. This is cut out of a solid block of plastic, and as a result, it slides faster on most surfaces and it tends to not wear away as quickly. It comes with one-sided axles, which make it a lot easier to set up than some frames, and it has what I genuinely believe is one of the best H-blocks for skating flat. It's nice and wide, but not too wide, and it's also nice and deep, but again, not too deep, and it's got that really nice taper, so it basically feels like you've already worn it in the very first time you skate it, and the wheels are perfectly distributed evenly, and these are 58mm wheels, and as you can see, there's still a lot of clearance between the edge of the H-block and the start of the wheel. So if you're catching on these, or you're sticking or getting wheel bite in any way, you've got to be doing something seriously wrong, because these, in terms of a flat frame, are more forgiving than most. Also, despite the fact that these are made out of a solid piece of plastic and have absolutely no give whatsoever, they're surprisingly easy to set up, and I think it is just because of the measurements. I think they've found a way to make it perfectly wide enough so that when you slot the wheels in and put the axle in, it doesn't in any way rattle or roll about, but it's not so tight that they're an absolute nuisance to get in there in the first place. And for that alone, hats off to you guys. That is a stroke of genius. These frames really come into their own on rails and smooth ledges. On rails, they are lightning fast, so skating in a skate park with coping and P-rails, etc. is just so much fun. You don't have to put in any effort whatsoever, and skating on smooth ledges, these just glide. My only complaint about this frame, or complaints, is that because it is such a stiff, hard frame, when you're grinding rough obstacles, you really feel it. When you're grinding a rough ledge, you're aware of the fact that it's a really hard object on a really hard object, and it kind of trembles through your body a little bit. You can feel it. It's like when you're on a set of skates and you suddenly go over a rough bit of road and you can just feel it jiggle in your body. But some people might like that, some people might not. Some people might like the feeling of knowing that they're grinding a rough object. I don't mind it, and it's not enough to put me off. In fact, I would say this is probably one of my favourite flat frames. This is my third pair of these. I absolutely love them. The only problem is they also happen to be the most expensive frame in this video, and one of the most expensive flat frames you can buy. These are over £100. I think they were £110 when I bought them. So when you wear through them, you do feel like, oh God, I'm now about to make another huge purchase. Fortunately, these have got a really good shelf life. They last a really long time. Entente also have excellent customer service. I would argue some of the best customer service in the industry. I had a pair of these before that cracked after a little while. Contacted Entente, they replaced them straight away. I had no further issues with the frame, and I was genuinely shocked by how quickly they got back to me and how quickly they issued a replacement. So yes, it is one of the most expensive frames on the market, but you're paying for quality, You're paying for the fact that it's cut out instead of using a mold. You're paying for the fact that it's a really small business and they need the margins in order to survive. And you're paying for some of the best customer service in the industry. Wow. Ow. Now that we've got to the end of the video, spoiler alert. I don't think there's such a thing as the best flat frame. I don't think there's such a thing as the best frame. It's just what the best frame is for you. Skating is such a personal thing, and it's all about what you want from a frame. It's what things are you willing to overlook, which compromises are you willing to make, and which things are deal breakers. What is it that you're not willing to shift on? For me, I need a deep groove. I don't like a shallow groove. It makes me feel less confident when I skate, and I just don't enjoy how it feels on H-block tricks. I need a frame that allows me to use either tapered or round wheels, because I don't enjoy using flat wheels. I don't like the feeling of rolling around on that profile. It's not enjoyable for me at all. And for me, I also prefer it if a frame has one-sided axles, just because I think they're easier to set up. And some people complain that if you strip the axle, then you're kind of screwed. But most axles are really good quality these days, and that doesn't tend to happen. So I'm willing to take that risk. Just before I finish the video, I want to give a giant shout out to my Patreon supporters. They are listed on the screen now. If you enjoy the videos that are on the YouTube channel and you want to see more of them, there's loads on the Patreon that are not published on YouTube. They're not public. There's also photos and ramblings and insider gossip about the industry and jokes about the industry, because there's a lot of stuff to make fun of. As always, leave a comment below. Let me know what you think of the video. As you can see, I'm using a green screen. That's because I got kind of tired of having to move all my living room and dining room furniture out of the way in order to set up lights and the camera. So I just did this in my office and shoved it all against a wall. Do you want to see more videos like this? Do you want to see less? Let me know what you think about the frames. Which ones are your favourite? Which ones are your least favourite? Which ones have you not tried yet and you're curious about? If you've got any questions, I'll try my best to answer them. And as always, thanks for watching. Speak to you guys soon.